Hey, buddy.
There you go. Yuck, yuck, yuck.
And I think, when we talk about uh, try to sit in a decent way here. Uh, we want to talk about the iditarod. We want to talk about evolving the race organization in a way and that goes back to the purpose of the event. Joe Senior, and I just want to talk a little bit about what I think the Reddington, name in Alaska and what the Reddington brand in Alaska was about, and then what it's become. And I have no axe to grind with any individuals in the Reddington family so much as I just see clearly you have to have objectivity and consistency. If we're saying things with we don't want Danny Seavey to be commentating with the Iditarod, we have to look hard under the microscope. We've got an issue with Barb, who's the mother to the Reddingtons, Remy, and whatever, and she really doesn't have qualifications. Really shouldn't be in an official capacity at the Iditarod organization because it's a conflict of interest, because you creates that bias like we talked about, similar and parallel to the issues when you have Norman on Jeff King's land, when you have a Reddington on the headquarters land. There's too much of a problem and a potential. And like I kind of typed out something earlier yesterday, and it's like it becomes a little league parent thing. Sure, if I was working for headquarters and my kid was in the race, I would probably want to do a few things to try to get that kid set up to do well versus having the other kid, the competition, set up to do well. So, it's just cut and dry, black and white, that there's no way that, you know, Barb should be at an official capacity at the Iditarod headquarters there. Now, Remy's been doing the rides forever. He's the son. That's one thing. Having it somehow not be, you know, not be better. There's not enough oversight there to have Barb doing the other thing. And, you've got Robert coming out of God knows where, like we said. And, no one wants to pick on the Reddingtons. I think they're good people. But, some of the issues we've talked about in terms of the old school stuff with the Seavies, I think is true. I think it's true with the Reddingtons, too. And so you want to have that consistency, too. I don't want to be catching myself where I'm just like, we're sort of like a verbal onslaught against the Seavies. Let's open the door for the one-dog class for a Reddington to come and compete, too. But let's also hold them to that same standard. Otherwise, what we're doing is, we're putting a musher like myself, who came from the States, but I grew up training dogs and running dogs and doing races back there. Came up here and worked for someone who's won it a bunch and did, 5 summers of the tourism and did several winters, and I ran, did a lot of races. There isn't a consistency there where, I can have a dog without a house. Someone else, if you're the owner's son or someone who's working at headquarters son, or if you're in Alaska versus the States, there isn't the consistency within the community. So we want to intelligently evolve this. And, the big thing for me, and, I'm just kind of doing this just because a lot of it's because of the lawsuit, and I think a lot of it's because of what we're sort of really articulating with the human trafficking issues. But, the big thing for me I want to talk about is, for me, we have to be careful because I see like the Reddingtons sort of pushing the thing with like there's a high school or something in down there in the Matsu in Knik or whatever, and the the Reddington statue or whatever. But we have to be hard here because the Reddingtons that are now today are not the same thing as Joe Senior and his legacy, and not even just Joe Senior, but Dorothy Page and that early year community in terms of the advent of the long distance racing in Alaska. And we want to go back to the purpose that was articulated then, which was keeping the sport alive in the villages. And I think it's fair to say that the modern race, how it has evolved, has failed towards that goal. And it's very symbolic. Like I was saying this last night to myself, sort of, I was camping out with my dog up here outside of Fairbanks, and sort of articulating to myself how it's very symbolic with Ramey, who is Joe Reddington Sr.'s son, or one of several sons. There's also the, Joey up in there's a couple other ones, up in Manly and stuff, and they race dogs and train dogs too. But I was just saying, and then he's married to this one Barb who is like a native, or is she Chinese? I'm not sure what she is, but it's really symbolic of how he does the sled dog rides and how that's what's happened. with the next generation, how it's basically devolved into this thing that the tourist economies and all those big businesses, whether it's a Jeff King doing sled dog tours in Denali Park, or the Seabees in Seward, or a Linwood Fiedler, or the Alaska Icefield expeditions, in Southeast Alaska, or Alaska Excursions in Southeast Alaska, the Robert Murphy Company, all of these different businesses have a tremendous amount of impact on the racing, because they allow the dog mushers, in the early years there was more fishing, it was like firefighting, it was more like working within the working class economy as it is, but it's really become about feeding the dogs, about being able to raise the dogs. And for the racing and the training, I think it's a fair observation that it's gotten away from that, and it's become this tourist economy fueled enterprise business ecosystem that is not necessarily so much about being part of like the community or the working class Alaska anymore. It's really about being the son of someone, where there's, and having the right connections, etc., to position yourself the right way. So, if you have a great job in the tourist business for 10 years, you don't have to worry about feeding the dogs. You don't have to worry about those things. And you see people getting pushed out of that economy and out of those businesses, and the lack of and a lot of times, you don't want someone to compete, and that's why I was kind of getting with the little league parent scenario. The Seabees don't want someone to compete with their kid. They're not going to give someone like me, a young me, even though I'm qualified, I'm a great tour guide, I'm good at what I'm doing, I've got a nice young batch of dogs. They don't want to give me a job because I'm going to compete with Dallas. They don't want to sell me a dog because I'm going to compete with Dallas. Same thing with the Redmonds. Even though Ryan was my friend there for a while, they don't want me in there next to him because I'm going to beat him. So, and where does that get away from the values of the sport and everything, and it becomes about bankers. It becomes about, and I don't want to use the term too harshly, where it's like, but it's not Jewish, but it's like the development system that came from Europe and everything, versus what the race was supposed to memorialize and preserve and commemorate, which was the indigenous thing. And that's what sort of the Redington, and I think the early years and the purpose as it was articulated of Iditarod, that was what it was all about. So it's challenging, I think, in this moment where, everyone needs to, as Alaska, the statehood matures, everyone needs to make a buck. Everyone needs to be able to integrate to like the blue fire architecture, the development, the economic system, to be able to pay bills, pay taxes, and doing the tourism is a great way, and that's something that was discovered. But that direction for the sport is a thing that almost sort of self-detonates on it, and makes it so that I think it almost prevents it from realizing its original purpose and impetus, which was, going back to those early values, going back to that effort of Dorothy Page and Joe Sr. and all those other people who were involved, just even the ones that just racing, and the people in the villages and the checkpoints, and those early years where it was really about the vision of commemorating the cultural legacy of working with the dogs to live off the land, and working with the dogs specifically in the villages, not on the road system, not the big sponsorships, not the big tourist businesses. And it's great to showcase the sport. I did it for years. I could go out there now, and I was just saying, I walked into the Yukon Quest the other day, and some guy asked a question, I don't know what it was, but, and it's like, I could do a better job being a tour guide than 99.9% of the mushers in the race, so, and I could be a great spokesman on behalf of the dog mushing sport, and I was for years, but I also see, firsthand, I've encountered and struggled through and overcame the issues and the challenges, I think, with the cultural differences, and also with the the disparity between the opportunities that are there, and I worked hard, and I applied myself, and I did my research, and I was very driven, and blah, blah, blah. With all that said, though, too, I can see I did have opportunities, come to my on my behalf when I was younger, and it positioned me well versus some other people. So I want to help with this one dog class thing, beyond what we're trying to do in terms of holding the quest and the Iditarod accountable. I want to help that the sport and the community sort of reintegrate to Alaska, to the broader Alaska, and back towards that original purpose of Joe Sr. Not Ramey, not Ryan or Ray or Robert, doing the rides and posting on Facebook. I think that's not what the purpose was about, and I think they know that too. That's not what the race was about, and not about being someone's son or someone's grandson, so we want a higher standard. We want something where there's consistency across the board, no matter if you're a Reddington or a CV, or if you're me or some XYZ person. So the issue with Barb at the headquarters, just to go back to it again, and we want to be consistent, because you don't want Janine CV, or you don't want Lisa Mackey, or you don't want my mother, or person XYZ, or Barrington's mother, or Boozer mother, or all these other people, or Zach Steer's mother working at that capacity headquarters either. So it becomes a conflict of interest towards the race's objectivity and operating in a way that doesn't have bias. Anyway, I gotta grab my dog. There's another dog here. Let's see. He's gonna come here. And like a couple Siberian Huskies, some people just walking Siberian Huskies just walk by her to grab my dog, but I think what's happened with your Mackey name, your CV name, your Reddington name is with the race and the sport and the way it's evolved. They're really show dog guys. They're show dog families. They're show dog names, and it's gotten away from performance. You know what I mean? And I think you see some of those families. You got whether it's a Tyrell or Jason Mackey or even a Reddington, or they're going to go wait in the side and just wait because they see it so much, the economics and the money, and let Lance have his run, or let someone else do it, and then we're going to try to get the dogs in a little bit, and to me that's just so opposite of everything that competition and competitive stuff should be about. So I just think with this $1 class, too, just talking about like the wild popularity of Canicross in Europe, and I've said this a million times, and just like to try to tap into the health and fitness set, so we're optimistic. We're not approaching when we're doing dialogue about the quest and the iditarod. We are very solution oriented. My discussion and my comments and everything, when I frame it, and I've been framing it, it's thoughtful, it's good dialogue, it's intelligent, and it's not coming at it in a destructive sense. It's coming at it in a here is the path towards the light sense. So you have to, I think you have to understand that, and that's what really frustrating to me. When I get a comment deleted with a newspaper or something, I'm not and that's the essence and the soul, I think, of what's going on beyond just me wanting to go back to the purpose of the sport. I was a great musher. I was good at what I was doing then. I'm good at what I'm doing now, and they don't want the competition, so people are going to go out of their way to try to get me out of the way because they don't want competition, and they don't want someone who's going to tell them that they're better than them either. And is there an economic aspect to that? Is there an economic aspect to everything? Absolutely. But does that why in competition, why can't there be those angles? Why can't there be that kind of thing? And I think the sport really has become this thing where, like I said, it's the Mackeys and the Reddingtons and the CVs and the show dog thing, and it's just, to me, it's something that the doors need to be opened. It's not healthy for them to be in that limited breeding pool of competition and stuff. You need to open the doors. Like when Sorley came over and beat them, that was great. When Swingley came up and beat them, that was great. And it's not that they're not good people. It's just that there needs to be a consistency across the board, and there's not. So there's different standards for them, and they're not for everyone else.